Hi, Dr. Fox here. Welcome back to Excel Basics, and we're in part 2. And I want to begin with two very quick tips. One of the things that we already introduced you to is that in each cell, the little bottom right-hand corner of each cell, there's a small square. So what if I have the number 1 here? If I put my cursor and drag on down, it's simply going to copy and paste whatever's in that very first cell. But Excel is pretty smart. What if I began with a pattern like 1, 2, 3, and I highlighted the 3 and then grabbed the little square and made a small plus? Excel is saying, oh, you're doing multiples of 1. So for example, what if I started a pattern of 5, 10? What's next? 15, 20, 20. Yeah, multiples of 5. Or what if I had a date, 1/1/2022, and clicked and dragged down? Excel is thinking, oh, you probably want to do every day of the week. What if I set up a pattern 1/1/2/1, the first day of every month? I highlight both of them, click and drag down. Guess what it's going to give me? It's going to give me the first day of every month. Or how about a day of the week? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so forth. What if I used an abbreviation, MON? You got it. It just follows that pattern. So autofill is one of the handiest features when you're creating worksheets. Sometimes you'll begin the pattern and you'll say, Excel, just help me to finish this out instead of typing everything in. Now, the second real quick tip is printing. And we can, if we wanted to print just a selection, we simply highlight the selection, go up to the File tab, go down to Print. And sometimes if we have a cells highlighted, it will come right in as print selection. Oftentimes it's going to come in print active sheets, and we actually have to change it to, with the down arrow here, print selection. And this gives us our print preview, and then we can just print off whatever we want, whatever we highlighted. Okay, so those are two real quick tips. Wanted to kind of get those out of the way. Now let's move forward with preparing for data analysis. And one of the very important lessons that we're going to learn is that we always want to preserve our raw data. How do we do that? We do that by creating a working data worksheet. I already did it, but I'm going to delete it and recreate it for you. So how do we do this? We go to our raw data, and I want to show you a way to highlight cells that you'll use all the time. And it's by using Shift and Control, holding down both of those keys at the same time. But I'm going to highlight the very first cell that I want to highlight, hold down Shift and Control, and then use my arrows on the keyboard. So if I click my right arrow, watch what happens. It's going to go over and grab the data all the way to the end, and it will stop. And then I still have Shift and Control held down. Now I'm going to hit the down arrow, and it went down and selected all of the data. What if I just wanted the first column? I wanted to copy and paste the first column. Go up to the very first cell, hold down Shift and Control, and hit the down arrow. So it would just select that one, but we want the whole thing. So now I have Shift Control, and I'm going to do a right click. So it just got all of the data there. Now, what we want to do is we want to come up to the top here and copy that data. And then I'm going to go down here and click the little plus button. Go back up to the very first cell and click Paste. So we just copied and pasted this data into a sheet 2, but I'm going to change the name. So I'm going to double click on that and call this working data. And I'm not going to touch raw data. If I started analyzing data in here and I accidentally deleted 5, 6, 7 rows of data, or if I deleted a whole column, it's like, how do I get that back? So we want to preserve our raw data by creating a new worksheet called working data, and this is where I'm going to work and analyze the data. Another feature that is very handy is freezing panes. So for example, it might be good to freeze this pane, this row of data, the header row. How do we do that? I can go right up to the View tab, click View, and then Freeze Panes. Click the down arrow, and we have some options here. I want to freeze the top row, so I click on it. If I wanted to unfreeze it, go back up to it, and simply, it's a toggle. Simply click, well, it's not really a toggle. There's an unfreeze panes here, but I'm not going to click on that. So when I begin to scroll down, you notice what happens. It will freeze that top row, so I always know what column I'm looking at. So sometimes that's very helpful for us. The second thing that's helpful for us when we begin to analyze data is sometimes we have to create new variables. So for example, we have test 1 and test 2, but what happens if we want to use an average of those two tests to answer one of our research questions? Well, sometimes in preparing the data, we actually have to create new variables. So I'm going to create a new variable called average of T1, T2, and I'm simply going to do the go up to the FX button, and if average isn't in my list, let's say it wasn't, I simply type in average, click OK. Oh, there it is right there. Double click on it, move this out of the way, and then I'm going to highlight both cells. Test 1 and test 2, I click OK. So this is a form of review for us. And I want to also center that data. Now, we can copy, and paste into the next cell. Another way to do this is copy and then highlight all of the cells and click paste. The third way to do it that we've showed you before, I'm going to undo, is click on the very first one and then grab and drag just like an autofill. Oops. Let me drag it one more down. Okay, and you'll notice something from our first part 1. When we saw the little green thing here, it's saying something is going on with that data. So if you click on it and then you click on the little yield sign, what it's telling us is the formula omits the adjacent cells. Excel was thinking, don't you want to use this data point here in the adjacent cell? And we don't want to, so we want to ignore that. So I'm going to click on the very first one, hold down Shift and Control, and go down all the way, and then highlight this and do Ignore Error. It will get rid of all those little green little things in the corner there. Let me check my notes real quick. Okay, I've done everything in this first section. Now, I'd like for you to create a new working data worksheet and then create the average of T1 and T2 column by using the function, and then copy and paste however you like to do that. You can click and drag or hit copy and paste, so forth. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll continue on in a few minutes after you get that done. Okay, welcome to part 2, and I want to introduce you to something called filtering and sorting. There's a button in Excel that we use all the time. So just again, to put this in context, when we have raw data and we're working with our working data worksheet, I had a mentor tell me a long time ago that once we get the data, we really have to become one with the data. And that seems so kind of odd to me, that data we think of kind of factual, quantitative. though there's qualitative data, obviously. But in my thinking, becoming one with quantitative data, does that make sense? Yes, it does. So we're looking at the data. We're trying to understand what's there. We haven't even begun the actual analysis yet. But to do this, we often use filtering and sorting to get a picture of what's, of some of the patterns in the data. So to do this, we've already frozen our top row, but now I'm going to insert a new cells, a new row right above our first, or right below the header row. So to do this, we highlight where we want the new row to go. Then we go up to the Home tab and then click on Insert. You could actually do this up in the header row, but I found that sometimes it obstructs some of the data anyhow, or the header actually. So now I'm going to highlight this again on the Home tab all the way over on the right. Very handy button. I click on that one time and you see a button called Filter. So I click that, and all of a sudden you begin to see the little drop down arrows here. And so, for example, let's demonstrate by filtering data by intervention, phonics by grade level, and then sorting by reading score, so forth. So the very first thing, filtering data by intervention. So if we go to the drop-down arrow, let's say we just wanted to look at the phonics. So we would actually there's a couple different ways to do it. I always like to select the first one, select all, which actually unchecks all of them. So it's a toggle. But I like to uncheck them and then click on the ones that I actually want. So I'd want phonics. I click OK, and it only is going to show us the phonics data. And then, for example, now let's put the phonics in and sort by grade level. So I go up to the grade here, and instead of filtering, well, if I only wanted to see one of the grades, I could click third grade. So this is the third grade phonics. And I could calculate an average of the reading score for the third grade phonics. And then I could go on to the fourth grade and calculate the average for fourth grade phonics. And then I could go on to fifth grade and calculate the average for the phonics there. And then I could go to whole language and click on OK and do the third grade. See how I'm doing that? And then calculate the average reading score. And then go to fourth grade. Oops, I forgot to unselect third. And so that's fourth grade whole language. I could calculate the average reading score there. Bottom line, we're trying to figure out, do students do better with phonics or whole language in each grade level? And then I could finally go to the fifth grade, click OK for whole language, and do an average reading score here. So a lot of formulas to set up. Calculating the averages, it seems like a lot of work. And I'm feeling a little bit lazy right now. But actually, there's a quicker way to do it that I'll show you in the next section. So for example, we could do all of that. So what I'd like for you to do in the tasks, I'd like for you to insert a new row by highlighting where you want it to be and click on Insert, and then highlight it again, go up to Sort and Filter and click the Filter button, and then select. You can do any one you want. Let's go ahead and select grade 5 and whole language, and you should end up with what I'm looking at right here. This is what you should see as well. So go ahead and pause the video and recreate this data table by doing the tasks. Okay. Hopefully you didn't have any problems recreating using the filtering and sorting, but it is such a handy feature to use. However, if we had to calculate the reading score average for each one, third grade, whole language, third grade, phonics, fourth grade, whole language, so we'd be doing a lot of different calculations. What if, besides me feeling lazy, what if Excel had a new, a better way to do this, and it would actually create them all for you? Well, they do. It's something called a pivot table. It can very quickly create the type of data that you need really to have a clearer picture. And this is again before you're even analyzing the data. You're becoming one with the data. You're seeing the patterns, so forth. So let's create a pivot table, and then from that pivot table we'll actually create a pivot chart, which is really simple. A whole lot easier than what you think it might be. So to do this, we need to clear out our we need to get our data sheet, our data back to the way that it should be, so we can see all of the data. Here's where the filter is. Click on phonics, click OK. Yeah, so everything is back in order. I want to get rid of this filter column right here, so I click highlight it and then click delete. So now we're back up to normal. I do have the top pane frozen, which technically we could leave it that way, but let's go ahead and unfreeze that. Unfreeze. So now we're back to our raw data, and this is where we begin and we create a pivot table. So there are two different ways to do this. The first way is simply click anywhere in the table and hold down Control, and then click T. And what that does, it goes and selects all of the data, and it brings up a little box called, is this where you want the table? Is this the data you want to use for your table? And then also you check this box. It's already checked by default. My table has headers. Yes, it does, right up there. So that's that's the quickest way. That's the way I always do it. Control T, very quickly. However, if you don't like shortcuts, click anywhere inside of and go up to Insert, and this is where you'll find a lot of the things that we're going, or some of the things we're going to be learning right now. So Insert Table, there it is right there. Click one time, it brings up the same box, and then click OK. Now you realize what this has done. It has essentially frozen the first row. It doesn't freeze it, but it puts the header row up top here so that we can always see, and it's also created a sort and filter just like we just learned in section 2. So but that's not what we want to do. There's a little green thing, remember? Let's hit Shift Control down arrow, do that, and let's ignore that error. And now we have everything the way it should be. So this is now a table. The data is in table format. This is not a pivot table. We haven't created the pivot table yet, but let's do it right now. So what I want to do is click anywhere in the data, go up to Insert, and then click Pivot Table. And it's going to bring up a box, and it's going to say select the table or range. The table or range is table 1, and see what's highlighted right here? If we look up in the name box, that's table 1. So it's created a table for us, so we don't have to do anything there. But then it says choose where you want the pivot table report to be placed, on a brand new worksheet or on the existing. I always like to do the existing worksheet. And then location here, we can put in a cell. Easiest way to do this, click the little up arrow, and then just click one time on any cell wherever you want it to be. And this is actually what you would have had to type in, working data, so forth, so on. Click the down arrow and then click OK. So we have just created a placeholder for the pivot table. Okay. Now I'm going to move my mug out of the way here, somewhere, maybe down here. And here are the pivot table fields. So remember our question, do students do better with phonics or whole language in each grade level? So what do we want our rows to be, and what do we want our column to be? That's what we have to think about, how we're going to visualize this. And if you mess up, you can always change it. It's real easy. So what do we say? Phonics or whole language in each grade level. So phonics or whole language, that's the intervention. So I'm going to click and drag it down to the row. Oops. Click and drag it down to the row. Look, it's starting to build the table for us. And then the grade, we also want to see per grade. So I'm going to click and drag that down below. Oh, here's phonics, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, but we don't have the data in yet. What data do we want? We want to see the reading scores for each grade level, phonics and whole language. So I'm going to click and drag the reading score down to the values. Okay? Seems like we would put them in the column, but if you put it up here in the columns, look what it does. No, you don't want that. See, if you mess up very quickly, just move that reading scores right on down to the values. Now, what type of data is in here? It says sum of reading score. We don't want the sum of the reading scores. We want the average of the reading scores per grade level for phonics and whole language. So there is a button that you will use all the time. So get used to the button here. Click on sum of reading score. A couple different ways you could do it, but right here, choose the values calculations with the field settings. If I click on sum of reading score, go up here, it creates the a couple more, like when we create a pivot table, it will create a couple more context sensitive ribbons for us. So in the pivot table analyze, right there, field settings. This, and that's why I put it in red. It's such an important button. You'll use this all the time when you're creating to change the fields settings. So I'm going to click on that. Yep, there it is, sum of reading score. I want to change that to the average reading score per grade level, and then click OK. And right while I'm here, I want to highlight all, and I want to decrease, go up to the Home tab, decrease my decimals. Okay. So here are the, and I'm going to center it up. Here's the average reading scores for phonics, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and whole language, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Is this the type of data that I want? Do students do better with phonics or whole language in each grade level? Actually, if I click on this one more time, it's going to bring up this pivot table fields. And what I want to do is, actually I want to see each grade level and the difference between phonics and whole language per grade level. So I kind of have these backwards. I need the grade level to be here and then the phonics and the whole language. Guess what? Real easy. Just grab one of these. Let's grab the top one, intervention. Click and hold down and drag it below the grade level and look at the pivot table. See what happens. Changed it, okay? Here's the 3rd grade phonics versus whole language. 4th grade phonics versus whole language. 5th grade phonics versus whole language. This is my research question. Do students do better with phonics or whole language in each grade level? So I look, phonics 21.8, whole language 23.4. Okay, 3rd grade did a little bit better. Phonics and whole language, 23.4, 23.3. That looks about the same. Phonics, 23.3. Whole language, 24.0. Okay, now, so let's create a pivot chart from this pivot table. Real easy. Under the Insert button, we go over until we see Pivot Chart. And if I click on that, it's going to bring up a box here with all kinds of different options. A column chart makes the most sense here. A line, no. A pie, no. A bar, yes, a bar chart. So this will preview, but bottom line, we would like a column chart or sideways bar chart. Actually, let's do a sideways bar chart because it will show our grades. Let's do that one. Click on bar and then click OK. And what it has done for us, and I'm going to resize this. Oops. What this has done for us, it's created a chart for us of the average reading score, and you have the third grade whole language phonics, fourth grade whole language phonics, fifth grade whole language and phonics, and it's a way to visualize the data. It looks like the whole language. Yep, fifth grade a little bit higher than the phonics. The fourth grade looks very similar, and then the third grade looks like the whole language did better than the phonics. Is there a real difference here in the third and fifth grade? I don't know. We'll have to do additional analysis. But this is a way, again, to become one with the data, really take a close look at what we have in our data. And okay, I want to show you one other quick thing here in the pivot chart. You'll notice that there are drop-down menus here, and these look very familiar, don't they? So we could select all and say we wanted to print just one of them, just the third grade. Click that one. So again, filtering and sorting, or if we wanted to do the third and the fifth grade, it would just do the third and fifth. Or if we only wanted to see, if we only wanted to print out, for example, fifth grade and fifth grade phonics. So there's, and it also changes the pivot table. Again, this is a pivot chart, so the pivot table has the same thing as well. I'm going to select all three, and go over here and select whole language as well. Click OK. So we're back to normal here. One other thing that you'll pick up on later on probably is that you can really modify what this looks like by adding data labels. You can create a table down below, so a trend, you wouldn't do a trend line for this, but and then also if you click on this, also the little paintbrush, it will show you different styles, so you can have it look different ways. Here's some potential, and then there's also a color palette. Okay, told you, showed you too much there, but I'd like for you to recreate. You don't have to change it to orange, but I'd like for you to recreate what's on my screen by transforming the data into a table, and then clicking on the Insert tab and clicking Pivot Table right there, dragging the grade level and then the intervention into the row field. Remember, it was down here. And drag the reading score into the value field. Remember, we put it in the column and it was wrong, so we drug it back down to further to the value field. And then we went up and we clicked we went up and we clicked Field Settings under Pivot Table Tools and Analyze. And we changed the, in Field Settings, we changed the sum to the average. And then we created a pivot chart by going to Insert Pivot Chart. And then the last thing I'd like for you to do is to save the file like we had done before. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Go ahead and pause your video, work that out, recreate the data here. I'll change this back to blue the way it was. So yours should look something like this, and then we'll come back for a wrap-up. hopefully you were able to recreate the pivot tables and the pivot charts. And just as a wrap up, I want to remind you how important it is to preserve the raw data by creating a working data worksheet, as well as really saving that raw data maybe to the cloud or on another server, really preserving it, keeping it in a safe place. And then just the power of, I mean, think about what you've learned so far with formulas and functions, and how we've kind of built on that, really to get to the point where yes, we can use formulas and functions, but when we're becoming one with the data, when we're trying, eyeballing the data and really seeing what's there, even before we begin the analysis, using pivot tables and pivot charts really can help us to have a very good and clear picture of what's in our data, again, even before we do the actual analysis. So hopefully this is helpful to you, and blessings.